In a world where information seems to travel at the speed of light and traffic at a snail's pace, where the agenda of those at the helm doesn't always reflect the pressures on the streets, where the rubber hits the road, where there's queue of issues needing to be interrogated in the name of speaking truth to power.
Welcome to a place at the table,
where we set the agenda,
table the issues that matter to you,
and invite you to take a seat at the table. Welcome to a place at the table where our principal strength is tenacity. I'll be throwing out a challenge through my advocacy. I've titled it, Staying the Course, the Inconsistency of Nigerian Government.
Tenacity is certainly key. I'll be speaking of a crime scene many are witnesses to, and we are all victims of, the Lagos rental market.
Certainly a witness, Zuma, maybe even a victim. Thank you for sharing the light on this topic. I'll be revisiting the issue of local government autonomy, coming from the direction of the East Wing.
Right, and we're zooming in on an area in the South, the East, and now for stories from the Southwest. But wait, is that a renaissance I see on the horizon? King of Comedy, what's up? Great to see you here. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You certainly will be bringing fresh wind to the discussions at the table today.
Well, fresh everything, 100. But as far as I'm concerned, a fresh start demands that we begin with numbers. Right. Numbers help you know what you're doing. It helps you plan properly. So that's why I'm going to talk about census, or lack of one. So it's the root of all the problems that we have, the beginning of everything we have.
Right.
My interest is already picked, a renaissance and a fresh start. But first, we ought to consolidate on where we have gotten it right and stay the course. Nigeria, once held as the giant of Africa, is now the poverty capital of the world. But how did we get here? This isn't just the fault of the current administration. It's a problem rooted in decades of inconsistency in governance and policy. For over 40 years, we've watched as each government dismantled the policies of its predecessors, leaving us in an endless circle of starting over. Take the year between 2003 and 2007, for example. Nigeria made bold economic moves that put us on the path to stability. Our debt was reduced to a historic low, and foreign direct investment was flowing. It seemed like we were finally on the right track to success. But when a new administration takes office, they tore down those policies, and with that came a steep decline. In contrast, looking at Norway, like Nigeria, they have oil. But unlike us, they stayed the course. They implemented strong economic policies, and every successive administration that came into power built on those policies, refining them and improving them. Today, Norway is one of the wealthiest nations in the world, while Nigeria is still struggling to harness the potential we all know we have. This inconsistency doesn't just affect the economy. It touches every sector: agriculture, education, infrastructure. We launched new youth empowerment program, agricultural initiative, and social projects every 4 years, only for them to be discarded by the next administration. It's a pattern that kills progress before it has a chance to bloom. So, how do we fix this? The answer is simple: continuity. We must learn to build on policies that works, not tear them down. We must stay the course, refine the good, and eliminate only the bad. Until we embrace this, we will keep running in circles, wasting resources, failing our people. Let's push for the change that can break this circle, because real progress happens when we stay the course.
Like Steph was saying, we cannot compare Norway to Nigeria. Norway, they have less than 6 million people, and they are the 13th largest oil producer in the world. For further context, Nigeria, 200 million plus population, and we produce an average of 1.4 million barrels per day. Norway, less than 6 million population, and they produce more than 2 million barrels per day. So the comparison, yes. But I totally agree with you. We can make a lot of progress if we keep dismantling whatever initiatives that every time there's a new government in process. And this is so bad that sometimes even people in the same party, that, you know, they keep saying continuity, continuity, you come, they'll say, oh no, this is not working and all of that. And I think it stems from the fact that we don't look at ourselves, we don't focus on collective good. We are more focused on personal good. UWIN was a great initiative. I can totally attest to that. It was largely non-biased. A lot of people benefited, a lot of industries were created. And then the next administration came on and said, no, that's the end of it.
I mean, I was kind of like part of that administration that put that together. And I know how much money was spent on just the infrastructure for that to be implemented.
Yeah.
A lot of money was spent, right? Because we had to go around, get data, all of those things. Now, new government comes in power and started Empower.
I like to take it up from where you stopped, because you mentioned that even the same party, you had the same challenges. And I go back to the Obasanjo administration, where we had a lot of, you know, changes, economic changes.
We had MAPEP, it was great.
And a lot of things, you know, that were developed, and something that we could build upon going into the next administration. And then what happened with Yaradua? One of the first things that Yaradua did, the same party, the PDP, one of the first things that Yaradua did was cancel the sale of the refineries. Remember that? And there was also this Ajaokuta project that he cancelled that, you know, took us into this 15 years of litigation. And the idea of this identity politics, which is I'm in politics to serve my tribe, to serve my ethnicity, to serve my own people. And so I want to believe that when I'm in one position, I am there to favor those people. And we have to put an end to it by ensuring that we have master plans, development master plans, that is not about any identity, is not about any administration, that transcends administrations. If you have a master plan, for instance, that is 50 years old, say in 50 years, this is what we're going to do, right? Like what they tried to create in Lagos. And you must give credit to the fact that in Lagos, I think there's some semblance of we are trying to do something.
The first 2 years of any government, and this I know from working with a lot of these governors, and I spoke with a former president who has said this to me. When they get into office, they first settle in for 1 year. 1 year is to settle in. The second year is to understand which projects and contracts have been awarded, to understand who got what, who was enriched, how much is left. Then the next 1 year is to work on whatever things you have promised the electorate. The last year is for elections. So the first 4 years, nothing meaningful happens with all these governors, which is why you find like when Wike took over, most of all the model schools that Amechi set up, nearly about like 64 of them or thereabout, were shut down. And then they moved on to new projects. When Silva took over, and remember that Jonathan was upgraded to vice presidency. And when he took over as governor, he did not complete some of the projects that Jonathan had started, which was what led to the problems that they had. Now, another thing is vote mining. Certain projects are supposed to mine some votes for you. And if those projects don't mine those votes for you, you look for a place where you can get more votes and do projects for those people. It happens across the states. Sometimes you find a place that provides a lot of jobs, and somebody comes, breaks it down, and turns it into a shopping mall, or turns it into a cinema center or something, without mentioning names. But continuity is going to continue to become
inconsistent.
Yes, it's going to continue to become a time bomb for us if no laws are made for completion of projects and for people to hold them accountable.
But I'd like to pick on your comparison of Norway and Nigeria, because in media training, this is what we call solution journalism. You've come with what works in Norway and you contrasted with what's happening in Nigeria. I checked Norway, and I found out that Norway's oil wealth is managed by the Norwegian Oil Fund. It's a government, oil fund, and it is said to be the world's largest sovereign wealth fund. In contrast, who manages Nigeria's oil wealth? We don't even know. Because since the time of Buhari, I think, it's the president that is also the minister for petroleum. That's number one. Number two, NNPC is neither here nor there. We don't even know what they're doing. They became privatized from being a public, being a government agency. Still, no difference. Then, what is Norway doing well that we ought to do? We should be asking ourselves. Zuma said it's unfair to compare Norway with Nigeria because of the population. But you see, whether the population is big or small, there has to be a structure in place. The fundamental thing about our oil wealth is that we have no structure in place to effectively manage.
Where will Nigeria be in 50 years? What's the plan?
What institution do we have? Because
Nobody
you're
knows.
talking about institutions.
So what is the green energy plan, for instance? What is the blue economy plan?
What's our focus?
What is the creative economy plan? Okay, we speak of all these things in abstract, but in reality, is there a cohesive, combined vision that projects this as Nigeria's plan, to which we can then back it by law?
Vision 2020 was a plan. Was a plan backed by law.
It was backed by law?
Yes.
Yes.
It was backed by
What's the
Vision
level of
2020.
achievement?
A new government took over.
Interesting.
It's not enough to get things right. I'll say it again. Real progress happens when we stay the course.
I agree, Bright. Let's start by following through on the Lagos tenancy law and enforcement of illegal collection of rent in Lagos. A few months ago, a friend was moving back to Nigeria with their family, and I took up the responsibility of finding them a home. Little did I know I was stepping into the chaos that is the Lagos rental market. From the shady agents to the absurd viewing fees and the unlivable houses. Some agents don't even know what property they were taking me to or how to access them. And the fees, the agency fee, agreement fee, caution, all of them arbitrary. After wading through, we finally found the place, spoke to the landlord, agreed on terms, signed the paperwork, and thought finally we're done. But then the agent came back saying the landlord changed his mind and now wants 2 years' rent up front. Interesting, right? A few weeks later, another friend moving back to Lagos from Abuja went through the same nightmare. House after house, disappointment after disappointment, until they found a decently livable place. This time, the landlord wanted 3 years' rent up front. Is that even legal? How is a regular working person paid monthly supposed to fork out 2 to 3 years of rent in one go? Isn't this illegal? Who is regulating this market? Are we just expected to be at the mercy of landlords who ignore the Lagos tenancy law, which says it is unlawful for a landlord to demand or receive more than 1 year of rent upfront from a new tenant? It is unlawful for landlords to demand more than 3 months' rent upfront from a sitting tenant. It is unlawful for tenants to offer rent over 3 months upfront. That applies to sitting tenants. Violating these laws comes with a fine of 100,000 naira or 3 months in prison. Yet, here we are with landlords and agents playing by their own rules while the government turns a blind eye. The Lagos state rental market is a crime scene. Tenants need to know their rights, landlords need to understand their responsibilities, and the government needs to step up and enforce these laws. A law without consequences is a suggestion. A law without enforcement is a joke. Let's end this joke now. It's not funny.
The experience of your sister or your friend?
My friend.
It's true. So there's the law. The Lagos State Tenancy Law, I think it was 2011, right?
Yeah,
There's a new one now, 2024.
Oh,
okay,
interesting.
And then there's the reality.
Okay.
Okay? of the situation. So there's one thing that the law says, and then it's read. And hope, by the way, that law has exceptions.
Oh.
So there's certain areas in Lagos that are excluded from that law. If you live in Ikoyi, if you live in VI,
you can pay 3 years.
if you live in Ikeja, GRA, and I think Apapa. So, I mean, it doesn't say whatever, it just says those areas are excluded
from the tenancy law.
from that law, essentially.
There's no reason
So
the reason is because they
that's
want the
interesting.
masses who don't have those bulk money
yeah.
to be able to afford.
So it's possible. I'm not saying it is. It's possible that some of those places might be
fall
included.
within that
It's
space.
possible,
Interesting.
but it's important to note that the law in itself is being exploited by landlords and tenants, because it's like you said, Section 4 of that law was very clear about the fact that if you are a yearly tenant, you cannot pay more than 1 year, and you can also not offer more than 1 year. So it's both sides. All right, you can, if you're a monthly tenant, you cannot pay more than 6 months or something like that. But you see, there's the spirit of the law, but in practical reality, when you have housing shortages, you will experience situations that it has been exploited, and that's what is happening. And trust me, there are people who will go and offer them that amount. So where I believe that there must be action is that the government must show action. You don't need to punish everybody, just punish one.
Scapegoat 2 people.
1 or 2 people, and make it public. Make a lot of noise about it. So really, I mean, I've been a victim, to be honest. I mean, as a tenant, you know, we've been a tenant, and we experienced it. We were at the mercy of the agent.
You see, a landlord can put a house for 2 million naira. A real estate speculator comes and looks at the house and says, landlord, this house is more than 5 million. True. So it's not even the landlord that pushed the rent up.
The rent up, yeah.
It's an agent who comes and looks at the house and goes, I've looked at this your house now, Oga.
Somebody that will pay.
There's somebody that will pay 10 for this one. Then when you mention it, landlord is looking at 10 years to get his ROI. And this man is trying to bring that down to 6 years with this rent that he's asking for. Okay, try. Now, someone is desperate for a property. It's just like forced sale properties. Yeah. So he's desperate for a property, and his company, or he has money, especially immediately after elections, when monies from elections are flowing everywhere. And he's like, okay, I'll buy it. And immediately after elections, you find that a property that sells for 120 million, somebody just knowing he wants to offload the money he has kept somewhere, he doesn't want to take it to the bank, will be like, help me look for a property. Say the one we found is 200. Don't forget that middlemen also jack up prices apart from real estate agents. So the person you tell to go look for will find the house for 150 and tell the guy, you are going to do it for 180. I want to take 30 million. And then gives it to the manager of this person. The manager says, okay, how much did the house come for? He said 180. He goes to his other guy, says it's 200. The other guy says, okay, we'll pay 2 years. We'll pay for it, and he takes it. The value of that house has gone to 200. The landlord will make his friends who have properties around
in
the
the
area
same neighborhood
know that my house that I was putting for 160, 150, I sold it for 180. There's a particular tribe, so that we don't go into tribal issues. If they know a shop can add value to their money, to their business,
they'll pay more.
They'll pay more. But some other people...
And they'll offer to pay 10 years ahead.
Exactly. So they know that this place, if I get this place, in another 5 years, I can take the next shop and take the next place, and I'll be the only one on this stretch. Let me just pay for 10 years. And they pay for 10 years and take the place.
I mean, elsewhere in the world, you cannot pay anything more than a month's rent.
Because you earn it monthly.
So those are places where they have mortgage things, where they say, okay, if you want to buy a $200 million house today, you will find a bank that will issue it to you as long as you have good credit.
But where I'm going is government regulating the industry, and I think that's the essence of your advocacy. if the Lagos state government is not regulating the housing market, it means that the law for housing is a suggestion.
A joke, right now.
It's a joke.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, in what way is government controlling housing and giving an alternative to the private sector housing? Apart from the housing that Jack Onday, the former governor, the late former governor of Lagos, built, and we're still enjoying. There's the low-cost, there's the mid-income. I don't know whether there's a higher income, but I live in the mid-income, you know, the Alakmare estate. Fantastic, clean, and all of that. But what has Lagos state government done in recent times to make it affordable? They have new ones, but how affordable are they? So while we point to the private owners of houses, what about government?
Laws are designed and created to create balance and equity. Mostly to protect the common man that might not have the opportunities or the access that some people might have. But we can all on this table sincerely agree that in Nigeria is the opposite.
Yeah.
The law,
the law
and even its enforcement agencies are against the common man.
Okay.
Somebody says the only crime you can commit in this country is to be poor. That's the only crime. And you know, have you ever been in a relationship for a long time and you think it's good, but it's not?
Abusive, really.
Right? And then you now wake up one morning and you're like, this relationship is really, really bad. I had that moment with Nigeria 2 days ago. I'm like, damn, Nigeria is really, really a mess.
It is a mess.
Like you've smelled the shit for so long that you don't think it smells anymore. This whole problem about housing is infrastructure. If there's infrastructure in place, you can live anywhere.
That's true.
Everybody's taking advantage of dysfunctionality. You're like, oh, this is not working. How do we take advantage?
Yeah.
That's the problem. And it cuts across both government and private sector and individuals. Nobody's thinking of the collective. Because if the landlord understands that this young person is really trying their best to succeed, and they waking up 5 a.m. in the morning, going back home 11 p.m. in the night, the only time you have to sleep is 3 hours, and that's your entire life, what kind of life is that? Do you guys understand what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, Nigeria in itself, whether it's government, whether it's private sector, we need to start by thinking of the collective and think about things that can support everybody else.
There is a time to laugh and a time to be sober and put up legitimate staunch resistance.
Right, Zuma. After all, what is the point of the law if it's ignored or was still subject to personal interpretation? July 11, 2024, 7-man panel of Supreme Court justices, led by Justice Garba Lawal, delivered a landmark ruling granting the 774 local government areas in Nigeria full financial autonomy across the federation. To many activists and observers, especially those clamoring for this autonomy, the Supreme Court ruling was considered the final word on the issue and the end of a long-drawn battle. We at this table also celebrated the ruling. Unfortunately, it appears this celebration might be short-lived. Just a few weeks ago, Governor Soludo of Anambra State signed into law the Alhambra Local Government Law 2024. That law had several sections that contradicted the Supreme Court ruling. For instance, Section 13.1 mandates the establishment of a state joint local government account, which will hold the federal allocations to LGS. Section 13.2 gives the state government authority to distribute these funds. Section 14.3 stipulates that each local government area must remit a percentage of the allocation to this account within 2 working days. While Section 14.4 states that if the state receives the local government allocation, it must deduct the specified percentage before disbursing the remaining funds. According to Governor Soludo, Section 7 of the Nigerian Constitution empowers state governments to enact laws for the administration of LGAs, and that granting absolute autonomy to the 774 local governments is an impossibility, a recipe for humongous chaos, he said. In other words, he's telling the Supreme Court justices that his interpretation of the Constitution is superior to theirs. I see several problems with this. The Supreme Court never granted LGAs absolute autonomy. What they ruled on was the financial autonomy of LGAs. Governor Soludo was only being clever by half. 2, there's a risk that other states will follow the example of Anambra and enact similar laws. And 3, Governor Soludo has succeeded in rolling back the gains of the Supreme Court decision, at least for Anambra State. Before this east wind political destruction eviscerates the long-fought reprieve for local government areas, I believe the Attorney General of the Federation should immediately challenge this law at the Supreme Court and have it struck down. The financial autonomy of local government areas must be protected and preserved.
I did an advocacy on local government autonomy a couple of months back.
Yes.
Before the Supreme Court ruling. And when the ruling was made, I was very happy because it
celebrated it,
it's a new dawn for the common everyday man as dividends of democracy gets closer to them. But I have to say that I also understand the governor's concerns and their fears. Because as a chief security officer of the state, they need to be sure that the local government, they are doing what it is they ought to do. I don't think there is adequate oversight in that space on financial utilization. The councillors, they are literally non-existent. Like they are just there. And taking us back to why the idea of joint state and local revenue or project implementation came into being was the fact that at a point we had local government that they hadn't paid salaries in 8-10 months. So the concern for the governors is like, how do we ensure that they provide primary health care, that they provide basic education, that they provide the little infrastructure? I think that is what everybody is trying to.
So in short, you agree with Governor Soludo?
I so disagree with Zuma. I so very much disagree with you. The biggest challenge of the governors is adjusting to change. We are talking local government reforms here. We cannot continue to do things that we have always been doing it and expect change. Right? It is the definition of madness.
But we also need to remember that this idea of local state joint revenue project, it's a recent thing. I could say as far back as 20, 30 years ago, local government, they were relatively autonomous.
Zuma, my love. We have to move on. We need governance to trickle down to the local level.
I agree.
We need local governments, whether they're chairman or councillors, to be up and doing. I remember Yinka Obebe came here at the table to advocate for better people.
Yeah, at the grassroots.
Educated people, people who have administered companies to now be at the grassroots, to administer.
The remuneration
right?
is poor.
Yes. It's poor. It's part of the reform. We all have to be part of this reform. We all have to allow it work. First, it was the governor of Oyo State who challenged that ruling. Now it's Soludo, and Soludo has gone, Governor Soludo has gone ahead to enact his own laws.
The most annoying part of all of it is the total disregard for the Supreme Court in the first place. And let's trickle that down. Why would a governor feel like he has the right to disregard the Supreme Court?
Because the State Assembly did it.
Yeah, I mean, nobody cares about the law in Nigeria anyways. Like this, nobody cares, right?
Like you can be bought.
And I think it starts with the kind of people we have in these positions. Let me restate that. The kind of people we have in these leadership positions. We have job seekers in leadership positions, and that's the problem. People who are there to earn money. Leaders are servants. Let's not go into the part of civil servant or public servant. The name servant, does it not have a meaning?
People.
You are a servant. How is a servant telling me that I'm not supposed to be talking to you? Or how is a servant telling me that I can make you disappear?
As in...
You're a servant. It means you chose. Nobody dragged you from your house. You chose to come and serve the people. But we have job seekers. We have people who are in that position to earn, to make money. And when they see that something is being put in place to stop that from happening, they will fight against it. And that's what Gonzalo is doing. And for me, just the most annoying part is the fact that he's the one doing it, right? Nigeria's problem today, and this is me, where's my camera? This is me being 100% sincere. Each and every one of you that have ruled this country for the past 40 years should be ashamed of yourself. I don't care how old you are. I'm a young person, I'm saying it on behalf of all the young people. You should be ashamed of yourself. The fact that this country has become what it is right now is because of the bad governance over the years. And you still, after being governor, CBN governor, I don't know what you did, because at the end of the day, the outcome is still trash. You're still in a position where you could at least save face and do something right, and you're the one fighting against something that can benefit the common man. You should be ashamed of yourself.
The quality of education of most people who run as local government chairmen is appalling.
Very poor.
It's appalling. Some don't even have any education at all. And so
the people they put there.
Yeah, the people they put there
Their
don't have this. Yeah, their students.
So they had the option of putting people who actually are highly educated there, but they choose not to.
No, because the person who is highly educated will then become someone who demands for certain things. Now, the gerrymandering that is going on, they make it look like there was an election. But what they actually do is that they put their people in that office. And so the person is not even qualified to manage the kind of funds that you are talking about now. What you're talking about now, some local governments are getting like what Kebbi State Governor is getting. What the state is getting in,
a lot
in
of
the
money.
Some local governments in some states in like Delta, they are getting that. If a local government chairman is beginning to get 400 million, 600 million a month, 800 million. Meanwhile, he does not even know what his office does.
Why can't we have a structure that elects the right people that can handle this fund? Like, we cannot keep relying on our dysfunctionality and saying, okay, no.
Use that as excuse.
Yeah, as an excuse.
Would you contest for councillorship?
Absolutely.
The boys in the local government will not vote for somebody
you.
that speaks
Like
Turanchi like you.
There you go.
You don't know.
They wouldn't.
Start running, they will not vote for you.
We are the same electorate. We are the same populace. We are the same people. For some reason, we seem to look at people in the local government as a different set of, a class of people. No, we're the same.
When it comes to that argument that you had now, is that it's the same people, but at every time when they vote, it's the different mindset.
Yeah.
When they vote for the presidential candidate, it's a different mindset
I
than they
agree.
use for the presidential candidate.
I don't disagree.
And for the state, yes, now. So what then happens is they then feel, oh, tribal sentiments come in when it gets to this. Somebody one time said, Ali, your name was put for DG of NTA, but they said that you will not play ball when the time for election comes. That's the thing that happens.
When
For a
you
while.
enact a law, there should be a process in breaking people in and making them understand. That is missing. Supreme Court has passed the law.
use 5 years to
so how do you
implement.
break it down to the people, even the governors, to understand, and the local government people to
Well,
also understand what they should do?
There was a
Please,
time
sir.
that a Supreme Court will say, apologize for arresting somebody unlawfully, and the Nigerian police will publish an apology. Do you remember?
Wow.
Now, they will say, release this person. The police will say, come and take the person.
All right.
You see, so there's a gap now.
All right.
Oh my God, if they explain
Anyway.
Nigeria to you and
Then-
you understand, they did not explain it well.
There has to be a landmark or a legal framework for us to live by. Otherwise, we're making it up as we go along. And this will lead us nowhere. Okay?
Certainly, Inka, which is why I'm thrilled at this fresh injection of epic movies from the Southwest, rooted in a resurgence of cultural pride and identity. We're witnessing a renaissance of cultural pride and identity in southwest Nigeria. Telling stories about our way of life is enjoying great attention, such that there is a competition amongst our movie makers to outdo one another. Epic movies like Anikulapo, Ageshikole, Jagun Jagun, and now Lishabi are examples of fine storytelling that depict and reenact our immediate past. I love how our filmmakers are closing the knowledge gap that our school system has failed to close because of a rigid curriculum that still makes us teach our children that Lord Lugard discovered River Niger and that A is for apple. I loved the adrenaline in Jagun Jagun the Warrior and the excitement that greeted its release. The widely accepted movie, alongside Anikulapo, became a watershed in the portrayal of the indigenous culture of the Yoruba. Much as I loved Jagun Jagun though, its portrayal of women in Yoruba land was not accurate. From the first scene, it was a harvest of losses for women, a collection of stories of loss and betrayal in different dimensions. It portrays women as victims, cowed, and disadvantaged. Then Bolale Austin Peters has been criticized too for tweaking Bashorunga's story in House of God. I would like to caution for this reason our producers and scriptwriters on the accuracy of the historical stories they tell. Depictions of historical locations, dressings, language, the dialectal variations of these languages, hairstyles, facial marks are significant in documenting our cultural heritage. We must, as storytellers, understand that narratives are difficult to retrieve once constructed in a certain way. We must understand the emotive power the films carry, as well as its believability. Akinwumi Ishola damaged the historical facts around the person of Efunshetan Aniwura, Iyalode Ibadan, and not even his retraction in Punch newspaper in 2013 changed that perception. Alex Haley's 1976 work, Roots, is a historical fiction novel. It became a series, and he said it's a fictitious story based in a historically factual era. Storytellers must go beyond the exuberance of youthfulness and technology, competition, and wokeness to see the work they do as significantly critical to the preservation of our cultural roots and historic past.
I love the fact that there is a new surgence of historical movies, and I like the fact that storytellers are taking responsibility to share more of our history and cultural perspective, since they have decided to remove history from the curricula. You know, well, if they have, I haven't seen it in my children's scorecard yet. I don't know what the implementation process is like. But yes, it's important to be historically accurate. It is important to get the facts right, and if you want your movie to be an inspiration, you could just say that. You know, it doesn't have to be a full adaptation of the historical context, but it could be an inspiration, or it could be this is fiction, but it is inspired, or it is set in this era, and all of that to make it that way. I'm particularly excited about the movie that has been
the one for the Oscars?
No, the Efuroye movie that has caused a lot of buzz on social media. The Faithia Williams one about how this like there are so many parts to an individual. So you could be a slave trader, you could still be a unicorn. Like there's so many parts to us, and you can tell a single story in 10 different ways.
My take is that our stories are not being told properly, and then the platforms that we have for telling our stories have been taken from under our feet over time. I remember Auntie Nkem with Tales by Moonlight.
Yes.
Tales by Moonlight chronicled the strengths, the aspirations, the beliefs, and the values of our system, of our country at the time. And these stories were every Sundays, children will gather around a small television, whether it's black and white or color, and learn how Africans carried themselves, how honesty paid, how respect for individuals, how hard work pays, all of that. And then what did they do? They took the time and sold it to Zoe Ministry at the time. So it just meant that whoever could pay the piper would dictate the tune. Now, Jimmy Sholanke, who was a master storyteller, talked about in 1977 during Festac, him telling a story that was just like the Lion King.
Look at that.
Somebody took it, told it over time, and by the time it got to one person's hand, the person made a movie out of it. Madagascar, Tarzan, and all of that. Those stories were stories that should have been our stories. This lady, what's her name? Asha
Asha the musician.
Asha the musician. Maje Kudumi, the guy that used to run Jazzville, brought her to perform at one of my shows. This was in 2007, 2008. She was performing on stage. Most of the songs she's doing now, she had written them a long time ago. She performed. After a while, I was hearing some guys, it's okay, let her leave, Jerry. Let's have, yes.
Yeah, that's
let her leave, let's have Daddy Shoki. When she finished, I told Maje Kudumi, I said, this girl is awesome. She's going places. She said, the reception that she got now is discouraging her because she didn't. And then some guys from French Cultural Center saw her, took her to Paris. She became a big, and now people lay claims to her and her music. You then look at Herbert Ogunde, who had a traveling theater at the time, who were going from places that were not just Yoruba, and perform, yes, including the North, and telling their stories, and people were watching them, and without even understanding Yoruba, they would watch the play and appreciate it. There was a time the queue at National Theatre was much longer than the queue for BRT.
Interesting.
Yes. When Things Fall Apart came and they were showing it as a series, every Nigerian sat at home and watched it.
That's right.
There was a show called Take a Trip. Take a trip, I am proud. I am proud.
Story.
Super Story and all of that. Even Fuji House of Commotion.
Yeah.
We have the stories that were ingrained in our society and help reflect the kind of people that we are. The Yoruba people are doing a lot more historical movies now than the other tribes. Why? Because the Yoruba people embrace theater and storytelling earlier than every other person.
I produced my own show.
Yes.
And I've come to really understand what the struggle really is. You know, as consumers, we always say, oh, this is, they would have done this better, they would have done this way. But man, before I even go forward, I just want to give you your flowers. Like, shout out to you. I'm serious. Like, I'm not even, you should have your street. Like, you should have your name on the street.
Well, like they have,
I mean, all of this, you know, skit that we're enjoying nowadays. This was the foundation. This is how we all started. Now we have platforms where everybody can express themselves, but this is how we all started, right? And one of the, like you said, one of the key problems that we have is the fact that these things are dying out because there's no platforms. Netflix came in, Prime came in, and you can see within that timeline, there was a lot of stuff happening. A lot of movies were being produced because they were backing it with finance. Now Prime has pulled out, Netflix is pulling out. Where's the funds going to come from?
I like history. Up to now, I still watch the World War II movies on History Channel. I still try to like get myself abreast of history because I just love it, you know. And the reason is, why do people do what they do? And what lessons is there for people in the current dispensation? So I look at people. I actually wrote down their names. People like Kunle Afolayan, Bolanle Austin Peters, you know, Niyi
Akimolayon, brilliant
yes,
stuff.
Adebayo, Tijani, a lot of all these guys. I mean, kudos to them. I mean, and I love your advocacy, you know, in terms of how their creativity comes out in some of these things. And I think that what we have to do, and I'm just speaking out, you know, within the space that I am, is that we have to be deliberate and intentional in preserving our historical stories in a way that is not just accessible through these movies, but also through text. I believe that in reality, that they are text, they are oral tales. They are things that we can document in libraries, in universities, in places where people can actually go and read about them. If we don't do that, then we're going to actually be leaving it to these producers and directors to exercise their poetic license.
What we need is for a body like NTA to be like a DSTV that all other stations in this country then plug to. You people are like on your money.
That's
But you're right.
That's where our stories, because you said something, that way our
the
storytellers, will have a platform.
There you go. I love the bit about the effort of DSTV in telling our stories and giving the platforms. And I love that you've thrown it back to NTA, that, look, you can be a custodian of storytelling in Nigeria.
Census as a catalyst for development, that's what we're discussing now. A country that plans a census after an election is not serious about development. Since the disputed 140 million plus figures of the last organized census in 2006, none has been done again, meaning it will be 30 years of unsubstantiated data and guesstimates of our true numbers. I remember I worked with NPC, Nigerian Population Commission, in Dolphin Estate in 2006. The census is usually to help government for policy making, for research, for logistics, for security and defense. It's also for infrastructure, so you know where you're putting all of the things that you're doing. For social amenities, this place needs water, that place needs road, this place needs market. And it's also needed for improved standards of living, so that you can help the quality of life that people have. It is for proper taxation, because when you then know how empowered these people are, you know how much you can tax them, and whether you should lower taxes here or there. For market and commercial strategy, most people who have FMCGs know that you need to have a proper database to know what you're doing for certain places. Business development as well, and then civil service employment. When you have a proper census, you can know whether you've employed 24 Igbos here and you need another 10 more Igbos to balance up the number of people, so that there is equitable distribution of employment. For policies, for policing and for policing, for job distribution, and the future planning. We know that population control is also important, and you need this census to do that. For housing, town planning. These days, you need to know how many people are on a street, how many street lights you need, how many detours you need, how many U-turns. All of those things are very important. A proper spread of political power, so you know which place has provided and produced enough people to rule, and then you then think of other people. Then for age, for impactful funding, for age, for sex, for education, and all this data need to be collected and properly managed and filtered as well. Disaster management. When you have a flooding in a particular area, you then know where to move these people to, because your census determines how many people are in those places that will be affected. Successful agricultural programs have now been jettisoned by so many people, because the true numbers of the people who are into farming is the largest employer of labor. And the second largest employer of labor is the creative industry. But the people don't take this into cognizance, and that's why you need your census to even push your national integration. But you see, now when you look at all the above and see where we are, you then understand why we missed the boat. But what do I know? Maybe I'm just a comedian.
King of comedy.
But I would like to point out that you haven't made us laugh today.
Okay,
we need to fix that.
Okay. I need to fix that. But you see, if I came to your party and you said, Ali, if I were Anthony Joshua and I came here, would you ask for a punch?
No, not at all.
But you're not Anthony Joshua.
You just made us laugh. You just made us laugh.
You don't punch me today. What's going on?
Exactly. Is that Anthony Joshua? I heard you're a boxer. Let's see what you got.
Okay, back to your advocacy. A country that plans a census after an election is not a serious country. I absolutely agree with that.
Brilliant.
It's like we have a data problem. We don't like data.
At all.
A large part of our underdevelopment is just due to poor planning, and poor planning is due to inadequate data. And this is so funny, considering we're meant to have what was the last year or the year before?
They said they wanted to do it before the election.
Yes, and then they cancelled it because said there was no money.
Yes.
And then it occurred to me that so for the past 30 years, we've been living on vibes.
Yes.
Right?
That's so Gen Z.
That's it. We've been living on vibes. All the policies, all the reforms,
it's not based
The
on
winging is-
any concrete data. It is sad, it is appalling, and it shows in the quality of our lives and the quality of the development of the nation.
The thing is that what the census does is that it gives you a baseline. And then what happens to the question really, the problem is what happens after the baseline. So you mentioned 140 million people. Okay, so that was a baseline. Let's even imagine that census was accurate, was correct. Now, what has happened after that is that we have used data, available data and statistics to be able to build the population after that. So there are 4 things that goes into your population growth rate. The birth rate. Currently in Nigeria, our birth rate goes somewhere between 35 births per 1,000 per year to 36. So somewhere we're in between 3.5 to 3.6%. Then you have the death rate. Then you have the immigration rate. And you have the immigration rate as well. Those are the 4 things that goes into the population growth rate. Actually, there's a formula that is used to calculate it. So the problem is not the census. If your birth rate is as high as this,
We need to tax sex.
and let's say that for whatever reason, they say the census was wrong and we're 150 people, you're going to be back to 200 in 10 years. So I think we need to look at first the issue of the methodology. What goes into this determination? Is it correct in itself? Because what goes into the birth rate itself is things like the fertility rate. All right? They get this data from hospitals and things like that. We focus so much on, census or no census or whatever. What we really need to focus on is what actually feeds the census. I mean, what actually feeds the population growth
You've
rate.
talked about birth
And
rates.
those are the things.
So for me, the information census provides is beyond the population.
Okay.
It gives a holistic and insightful across all
Demographics.
All demographics. So we
Yes.
can't say it's not about the census. The census should be the baseline, like you said. It has to be what every other thing is built on. Because you can, at a quick glance, I am a data person. I am very big on data. I love data. It makes me happy. Because at a quick glance, you can see, okay, this is why this is where we have, this is the most densely populated area. This is, more people live in Lekki than in Ikeja, so that means we need to provide more alternatives, more roads and all of that. Those are the things that the census will give us. It's beyond just knowing the numbers, it's also actionable insights. That's the word.
But you see, the thing is this. I mean, go to the US, when last did they have a census? Go to the UK, when last did they have a census?
Okay.
So my point is this: do your census. Take your baseline. But at the end of the day, it comes down to data capturing.
Which is different from just counting the number of people
exactly.
that you
That's
have in
the
your
thing.
country,
All right.
like,
Don't compare our system to the US and all those places. That when last did they have a linked system that can even count a child that was stillborn.
I'm just saying that, look, do this population census now. If you don't fix the fundamental problem of data capturing, you're going to be back to the same spot, and then you'll come back again. You say, we need another census.
But the essence of census is data capturing.
Okay, yes, I'm saying. I feel like you guys are saying the same thing. I think what you're saying is more intentionality when it comes to capturing the census process, right? So which is capturing the data. It's not just like, 1, 2, 3, how many children do you have?
No.
It's like go in depth, get more information. Data is what drives the entire global economy right now.
Absolutely.
Like when you look at what artificial intelligence is doing, it's data. It's years and years of your interaction online and my interaction online that they have captured to be algorithms to be able to now train this entity. I don't think it's a technology to be able to interact with this data and give us results. In 2013, 2014, before the UN program, the first thing that was done was to go capture data to understand the problem. So there was a whole year of just trying to understand the problem of youth unemployment. And with that data, we were able to come up with that solution.
But a lot of people are excluded from being captured in Nigeria, from financial inclusion to healthcare inclusion. They don't even have access.
Now, you also know that when you do your census properly, it's easier to then do diaspora voting. The reason we don't become global citizens in this country is because when somebody gets missing or somebody does something in America and disappears into Nigeria, you can't trace the person.
No. A country that plans the census after an election is not serious about development. That's quotable quotes, words on marble. I know that I have a friend who lived in Germany and came to Nigeria. When he got back to Germany, he had to go and re-register that he had entered into the country. Because then it helps them with their planning. The problem with us in Nigeria is everything is political. We will not have this census because some people want to pad up things. Some people, for political reasons, I mean, the National Assembly is now talking about state creation. So if you talk about population, then you want to talk about how many people are in my state. Now, my state, or your state, is now going to be divided into two.
Ibadan state.
And I'm from Ibadan, I love it,
The one thing that we have in common is that we are seeking to identify the roads to progress. We dialogue to make the paths clearer. Have you found it enlightening? Those of you, we can get messages from those of you who have been watching. Please send us messages. Join us again at the table. Same time, same channel. And till then, it'll be goodbye from all of us here, plus the victim, plus the Ibadan state, plus the activist, and this guy that does not want to smile at this, having everybody from 40 years leadership.